ब्रह्मज्ञानातिमरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Welcome to another edition of the Bitcoin Babaji podcast. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 8th of September 2025, and today with Babaji we are going to discuss Comet 3i Atlas. Is it a comet or is it an alien spaceship? At this stage, this is one of the rarest, perhaps the top 3 rare most experiences we have ever had in our entire solar system history, at least in modern history, based on the high-tech astronomical observations which have been possible over the recent decades. Yes, this 3i Atlas, as you know, is very interesting and very unusual. It's in the news at the moment. So, as Bitcoin Babaji, we sometimes like to discuss all the cutting-edge technology as well as all the ancient Sanskrit wisdom and philosophy which is available. So it's the ancient with the modern. The ancient with the modern. Bitcoin Babaji bringing the ancient and the modern together. Yes, in today's particular episode, Comet 3i Atlas. Now let's find out a little bit more about this comet. It's a very rare and quite unprecedented experience to have this. You know, it's called Comet 3i because it is the third interstellar object ever to be found in the history, at least modern history of science. It is the third object that we've ever seen to enter our solar system from outer space, from somewhere beyond. And can you imagine, this is so rare that only 3 have ever been observed. And this is the third one. The first one was called Oumuamua, which is a Hawaiian name that was given. The second one was Comet Borisov, and the third one is Atlas, because it was observed by the Atlas telescope, and it is the third interstellar. So this is only in the past decade or so these 3 different interstellar objects were observed. And when I say different, I mean not only are they different from each other, but they are different from anything we have ever understood or seen or observed through science and technology ever in our history, and certainly the recorded history of humanity. And as we know, there may have been great ice ages 6,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, that may have wiped out more advanced civilizations. And so we're discovering now, for the first time with our new technology that we've reinvented, these interstellar objects, truly strange phenomena which need to be observed because, well, there are some people who are speculating, like Avilub professor, who says that this could be a spaceship. So very interesting times. We need to understand the concept a little bit more. So let's have a look at this comet and find out a little bit more about it. Here you have the artist's impression. The artist has been given a little bit of liberty about what this comet looks like. Very interesting concept. Look at it. I mean, we can say we do have some very interesting information about this comet. For example, here we are. Let's check out some of the information that we have. It's quite unique, this comet, actually. Not something that you can find very often in the solar system. And the strange things about it are the fact that it is just so big. You know, this thing is gigantic as far as comets go. You know, you've got the James Webb Space Telescope, which is keeping an eye on it, as well as the Sphere telescope. And as it gets closer, because it is something we have stumbled across during its arrival as opposed to during its departure from our solar system, we have had plenty of time to observe it. I realize that it only appeared a few months ago, June, July, so only in the past 2 or 3 months in 2025 did we have the first sighting of this particular comet. And so there's still a lot of information coming out about it. Some people are saying, well, it's 1 kilometer in diameter. Others are saying, no, it's 4 or 5 kilometers. But there's speculation that it could be 40 kilometers in diameter. So this is something very, very huge. And not only that, but it has this gas cloud around it, which some say is so big it's practically the size of Jupiter, that it's so big that it's half the size of the sun. Just a gas cloud, a carbon dioxide gas cloud around this structure, this so-called meteor. So it's inconceivable. In other words, the science is showing, based on the observations, and remember this is still very far away, so it needs to come closer for us to understand it a little better. But based on what we can see at the moment, the signature it is giving off, this carbon dioxide cloud around the comet is unprecedented, and it is scientifically unfathomable and inconceivable to the human science as we know it, the laws of science, for an object only 40 kilometers in diameter to produce a carbon dioxide cloud around it, the coma, which is the size of Jupiter, or almost the size of the distance to the moon, some people are saying, between here and the moon. So it's science which we do not understand, which we have never observed before, and which defies our understanding. So this is something quite new. In other words, we may think we know it all, but there's always something new to discover, and especially in interstellar and galactic observations. So this extra solar system item, object, at the moment it's called a comet. It is arriving from the Oort cloud far beyond our solar system, and it's baffling the scientists, so they simply need to find out more. There must be more information, and so as it gets closer, we are going to observe more and more this very interesting object as it comes by. Let's look at the trajectory. For example, here you are. You can see the trajectory. It's quite interesting. At the moment we have, as you can see there, the arrival of the comet Atlas. It's quite spectacular. We first saw it as it was passing by Jupiter, and it came in at only a 5-degree deviation from the plane of the ecliptic, which means it's very well aligned with our flat plane upon which our planets are rotating around the sun. And the trajectory is just inconceivably coincidental in its synchronicity with meetings of the solar bodies, the heavenly bodies that we have in our solar system. In other words, the trajectory is going to pass by Mars, it's going to then pass by Jupiter. Now, this is not bound by the sun. In other words, it's not trapped by the sun's gravity. It's able to come in from somewhere far distant and pass around the sun and fly off, never to be seen again. This comet will come and it will go, and we will never see it again. That's how rare and historic this is. So we are seeing it once and once only, and what we are seeing is something which we have never seen before. And then we will never see it again. So there it goes. Once in a, not only in a lifetime, but once in a universal age do we get to see this kind of concept. Uh, it's really defying our science. So what could it be? We can have a look at some of the dates in which it is arriving. For example, here we have some of the flyby dates. But here we go. So, as you can see, this item is going to be here quite soon. First of all, it makes its perihelion in coming days. That means in just a few days from now, it's going to be at its closest position to the Sun. Now it's early September, so at the end of October, in other words, in about 2 months, just under 2 months from now, we've got 51 days left. This comet is going to fly behind the Sun from our point of view, from our geocentric point of view. So we will lose sight of it because the Sun's rays are so bright that we won't be able to observe it. It will be behind the Sun for several days, where things could happen that we're not aware of. Nevertheless, when it pops out from around the other side of the Sun after its perihelion flight, it will then continue in an interesting curvature. You can see the curve of this trajectory, the coincidence of how close it's going to be to Mars and how close it's going to be later on to Jupiter. It's just phenomenal, because it makes a close flyby, such a close flyby to both Mars and Jupiter. First of all, going past Venus, there you are in 55 days from now, and then by the end of the year, come December, in 100 days from now, it makes a relatively close flyby to the Earth, and then later on next year past Jupiter. So while this is happening, we have some of our Earth satellites out there that can take photographs and zoom in and find out a little bit more about this strange concept that we simply don't have any understanding of. Is it a comet or is it a spaceship? So the mystery is out there, the questions are still unanswered. However, the closer it gets, the more information we get. And so let's find out a little bit more about what's actually in the statistics and the information that has been there so far. We've got the orbit, as you can see, so we know where it is, where it's going, and we can more or less time it, because that is the nature of the solar system. Now, other interesting things that have been discovered, for example, are the metal signature. This metal signature is just very unusual. Actually so unusual that it's unprecedented. We've never seen this ever. It's quite strange, in other words, because most comets, when they pass by, they have certain particular symptoms, and usually they release clouds of gas, of course, but they also release metals. And so whenever there's a nickel, the metals that are released from these asteroids signature, there will also be an iron signature with it. And this is universal, this is understood, except for this particular planet, this particular asteroid, or comet, should I say. It has quite unique characteristics. There's the nickel emissions without the iron, whereas all the other comets, they've always had the combination. And according to science, you don't really get nickel without iron, except in this case. So in other words, we are seeing something that is coming from way beyond our solar system, based on laws of science which are beyond our galaxy, beyond our solar system in that regard. These laws defy our understanding of the laws of science based on our solar system chemistry. So that's what's happening here. The new chemistry, this is rumored, theorized to be anything between 3 million years old to 9, 10, 11 million years old. In other words, older than our solar system, older than our sun and our planets. So there you are. This is something which is transcendent, or certainly defies the laws of our understanding of science. So this actually gives us some insight into profound concepts, like the fact that we understand reality only based on our laws of science in our solar system. That's our reality. In other words, it's a relative concept. Our existence here is all relative to the sun and the earth and space in which we find ourselves. And so our chemistry, it might be quite unique compared to other places in the universe. Other solar systems might have other chemistries and therefore other life forms that we know nothing about, which defy our understanding altogether. So this is just the philosophical insights that come when one thinks these things through, and when we consider this object, which is bigger than any interstellar object we've ever seen, is producing a more bizarre coma or carbon dioxide cloud that we've ever seen. And up to just recently, there was no tail on this comet or asteroid. So in that sense, people started thinking, no, this could be something other, something else. However, in recent observations, we have noticed some interesting things, like a comet, a coma starting to form, as they're called. The coma is the tail. So we've recently noticed that there is a tail, because as it gets closer to the sun, this body will heat up. And as it heats up, it will start either melting or evaporating, depending on what chemicals make up the object. So usually that's where we get the gas tail. Some sort of emissions start to take place. It's flying very fast, 60 odd kilometers per second. It gets hotter and hotter as it's going around the sun now, and it starts evaporating. And so the tail is there, and it tells us a little bit about this object. And this is where the findings have been discovered, that actually it's completely paradoxical, and we're learning that different types of science, different chemistry exists in different parts of the solar system, because it's a lot older, many millions of years older than ours. The metals there might be different, the composition and the way they react might be quite different. So this is just the beginning of our understanding of the cosmos. We may understand the solar system, but we certainly don't really understand the entire cosmos. So there's a lot to be understood. This is the wonder of this particular object, that nobody knows really what it is, and even how big it is. We can't say for sure how big it is yet. So very exciting times, and as someone who likes to explore these different items, it's really good to find out a little bit more. So we know some of the dates when it's going to be in our area, and we will keep an eye on all of these exciting flybys, and we'll get some more photographs, and as the information comes in, we can explore a little bit further. And do you know why people think this might be an alien spaceship? Because when the nickel came off and started being observed in the gas cloud around the asteroid, flakes of nickel were observed, but there was no iron. The speculation arose that Well, this could be a metal spaceship, and that as it heats up in the great speed as it approaches the sun, the metal flakes of nickel are coming off. Nickel plating is usually what you put on to help prevent oxidizing and rusting and so on. So maybe it's a metal spaceship, and as it heats up, as it gets closer, flakes of metal, nickel without iron, which is very unusual and not a symptom, a characteristic of a comet. Avi Loeb, for example, the professor who's studying this, decided no, this very possibly is an alien ship. But then he said the same thing when he observed Oumuamua some years back, in the past decade. The first interstellar object came through. So there is this sensationalism, but the truth is that the ancient Vedic texts of India described beings from heavenly planets, from other planets, extraterrestrial beings who traveled on spaceships or ships or carriers, which were quite different from ours. And the Vedas talk about these extraterrestrials as if they were gods, certainly living longer than us, more powerful than us, maybe more gigantic in size, living longer lifespans. So they've been observed as gods. These extraterrestrials have been mentioned in the ancient Sanskrit texts for thousands of years. So we wait to find out if they will ever pass by. It's described that in this age, the Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, the extraterrestrials, the heavenly beings, the demigods, the devas no longer visit Earth. It has become too degraded here. But in previous ages, going back perhaps at least 5,000 years to the previous age, and maybe tens to hundreds of thousands of years previous, they were invoked by the purity of the priests and the worshippers or subjects. So who could say what these gods were up to and what role we play in relation to them as their subjects or servants, some say slave species of the gods. Nevertheless, there are those that say that in the Vedic times we had far greater relationships with the gods, and that there are even those children of the gods and their union with humans that walked the earth around the time of Krishna 5,000 years ago, who spoke Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Sanskrit text from where we get our yoga, wisdom, and philosophy today. So exciting times, whether this could be return of the gods or someone more malevolent, some of the demons perhaps from the lower planetary realms, or is it simply an asteroid with unusual scientific characteristics and chemical signatures? We shall find out more as it gets closer and I3 Atlas becomes more familiar to us. We take photographs while it is with us, because as I say, once it leaves, it's gone for good. That's the end of it. So find out what you can for now. Until next time, for another interesting episode of whatever exciting technology or ancient wisdom is upon us. This is your host, Bitcoin Babaji, signing out.